Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and we are continuing on the trail across the southern states of America. And what could be better than have representatives in Kentucky? We all know what Kentucky's famous for, but I'll let these gentlemen spell it out. And we've got Mike and Herb. Mike, you're from the State Tourism Board. What do people always ask for? What's the state famous for in terms of food and drink?
Well, obviously, I think the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to Kentucky is bourbon. Bourbon has to be made in the United States, and we make 95% of all the bourbon in the world, 100% of the good bourbon, I will say. And it truly is, and it's really become our calling card. It really does set us apart.
Excellent. And Herb, you're obviously involved in bourbon in a big way. Perhaps you can explain a little bit about what you do, but also where the hell does bourbon come from? I know it's water-based, but where do you get the water? Where do you get the other ingredients?
Absolutely. As Mike said, all the great bourbon in the world does come from Kentucky. A lot of that has to do with the climate, the high variations in temperature, barometric pressure, and humidity make that barrel soak up some of the great juice that we lay down. As well, some of the limestone water will be a great filtration device naturally for that water. And the expertise from distilling, actually from folks who migrated to Kentucky originally from Scotland, has really fostered a culture around bourbon in our state.
And when you serve it, do you serve it on the rocks? Do you serve it with a mixer? How is bourbon best served?
Well, the best bourbon in the world, I like to say, is the bourbon that's in your hand. So bourbon is also a food group for us in Kentucky, quite literally. We consider it an integral part of our food and dining repertoire. So the best bourbon would be served neat. That's going to be in its most pure form. But water, ice, and mixers can really open it up for us.
And I would add to that, it really doesn't. It's however you like it. I don't think I think one of the barriers to bourbon is people think you have to come in and be able to drink it straight and appreciate that. And sometimes that can be harsh to a lot of folks' palates. It doesn't matter. Believe me, drink it how you like it. We'll make plenty more. We've got 11.4 million barrels of bourbon currently aging.
Excellent.
And if you laid those barrels end to end, it would stretch from New York City to Tokyo. That's how much bourbon is currently aging. So there's really no right or wrong way to drink bourbon. Drink it how you like it, and the brands you like. Try different brands. Sorry, Herb.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
And even within the various distilleries, there are different mash bills or recipes. To be a bourbon, it has to be at least 51% corn. Most of our distilleries source their corn within a probably 50-mile radius of the distillery itself. And then you've got rye or malted barley as part of those other grains. But if you go back and look at the history of, the history of bourbon, as Herb was talking about, when settlers came in, they had to distill the corn, had to grow the corn to get their land, and then with the leftover, they just started distilling it. So it became a trade product, I should say, and it really just became, no pun intended, ingrained in our culture in distilling and bourbon. And as Herb said, where we are in Kentucky with the 4 distinct seasons, the natural limestone shelf, which is the natural filtration, takes all the iron out. You can't make a good bourbon or whiskey with iron in the water. Really just makes it ideal. And as I said, when you make 95% of an international product, you're doing something right.
Sure. Herb, is there a premium age? Is it like whiskey where, a 15-year-old is better than a 10-year-old, etc.?
Age is just a number. Honestly, we believe that sort of the magic number for us was 6 years at Bardstown Bourbon Company, which we just released our own 100% estate distilled products this past September. You'll see bourbons 25 years old. They're very oaky. It's all subjective, honestly. I love 6 to 8 years, but that number might be a lot higher for other folks.
Cool. It really does. It really does depend on your palate.
Yep.
And again, that's why I say try different bourbons. One may have too much oak in it or too much rye in it. It's for your palate. Try various ones, and it really is when even sometimes among the same product line, say one barrel is going to taste straight out of the barrel maybe a little different than the other. So again, sample as many as you want. We've got plenty.
Excellent. Final question for you, Mike. In Scotland, you mentioned that the heritage of bourbon is from Scotland and whiskey. They have a whiskey heritage trail. You have a bourbon trail in Kentucky?
We do. The Kentucky Bourbon Trail, we have, I believe it's 35 distilleries on the Heritage Trail as well, and then you add a small craft distillery. So it's a great opportunity for people to get out and see the different. It's not even necessarily, it is about the bourbon, but every distillery has its own story, its own history and heritage, and being able to experience that, whether you're a bourbon drinker or not, to be able to come in and experience that, learn the history and the heritage, how this distillery is related to this one, or they helped this one during a hard time, and how they've competed over the years. There's nothing in the world like walking into one of our warehouses, or rick houses as we call it, and you get that smell of the bourbon, and that we call that the angel share. But now, with the growth of places like Bardstown Bourbon Company bringing the culinary side into it, it really is a fully rounded experience throughout the Bourbon Trail. It stretches throughout the state of Kentucky, so whether you're coming in north, south, central, east, or west, you've got distillery experience to take advantage of.
Excellent. Well, it is part of the culture, and I think it's excellent that if you go to each separate distillery, you get a feel for the history and how it's grown up, and I think that's perfect. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, sir.